Notsando Makutulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced further easing of coronavirus restrictions during level 1 of the lockdown. He says from now on there's no need to wear a mask outdoors. The president says the easing of restrictions comes on the back of scientists' assertions that the country's achieved immunity levels against the COVID-19 virus. Now, indoor and outdoor gatherings can accommodate 50% of the venue's capacity, provided that proof of vaccination has been acquired or a negative COVID-19 test can be submitted within 72 hours of the event. There are also changes regarding international travel. Vaccinated visitors will not be required to produce a negative PCR test, but for those who are not vaccinated, a negative PCR test that is not older than 72 hours will be required. Meanwhile, the number of people attending funerals has been increased from 100 to 200, with night vigils and after tears still prohibited. Social distancing of 1 meter must still be maintained. So let's get some reaction on this. I'm joined by Professor Bonang Mohale, who's the President of Business Unity South Africa. A very good afternoon to you. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon. Your reaction to that speech last night?
Thank you for having me. Naturally, as business, we are absolutely elated because the economy is now slowly opening up. We particularly support the fact that tourism and hospitality can now at last be able to function. Tourism matters because there's about 2.3 million people that are employed in that industry, 75% of whom are actually women. It's also important because before COVID, about 10.2 million people visited our shores, contributing about 9.8% to the national GDP. So it is a big number. But also, we love the emphasis that the Omicron variant hasn't gone away. Therefore, we need to continue to be absolutely cautious and careful. The emphasis on the people that are fully vaccinated, and especially those that already have received their boosters, can then go and enjoy their favorite sports, that when we are outside, we don't have to wear masks. But indoors, we need to improve ventilation, and we still need to ensure that the non-pharmaceutical interventions are taken care of.
So you've spoken about the need for people to still go and get vaccinated and encouraging people to do so. One of the issues that the president raised during that speech was that we can't be like some European countries who are lifting restrictions completely because of the rate of our vaccination.
You see, when you look at the data, 60.1 million South Africans, as per the last census, we are now approaching 65 million South Africans. The president set us a herd immunity target of 67%. That's 40 million South Africans. So by last month, only 32 million vaccine doses had been administered, which means totally we are probably around 30% of people that are vaccinated. But science tells us that as we record closer to 100,000 people that have been killed by this pandemic, that number is closer to 300,000. The president last night says probably up to 60 to 80% of South Africans having been exposed to this virus, 90% of whom have been asymptomatic. Therefore, there's about an 80% herd immunity that has been naturally developed. So that gives us a little bit of confidence. But because we are driven by science and we are absolutely objective in our assessment of issues, I think the more we can encourage all our people, especially those who are going back to the offices, those are going to the sporting grounds, I think let's go and complete and indeed finish this process that we started to make sure that more than 80% of South Africans are indeed vaccinated. The sad thing is that the government tells us that there's about 1 million doses of vaccines that probably in another month or so might actually expire. If that were to happen, it will be sad, tragic, and regrettable, especially because we know where the people that need the vaccines are. The 11 million people who earn 350 social relief grants mostly through post offices. The 17 million people that are on social security, we know where they go. And then lastly, of course, as business, we stand ready that when you give us the 400,000 booster shots for all our mining members, Roger Baxter at the Minerals Council will make sure that that is dispensed with. When you look at Imperial, more than 100,000 employees, the Bidvest Group Limited, more than 120,000 employees, there's absolutely no reason why we should even be thinking of any vaccine that is going to expire. Lastly, I think instead of closing at 3 o'clock every day for vaccination and booster shots, this is the time to open 24/7. On Sundays, some of them don't even open up. And I think this is the time that all of us need to redouble our efforts to make sure that we defeat this coronavirus pandemic. Because generally speaking, there's probably 3 groups of people. The anti-vaxxers, a small minority, we won't do much with those people. Then there's another slightly bigger majority of people that have absolutely no access, so we need to go to them. Monjong, Kandla, Langanyanga, Guguletu, and the dusty hills of Umutu. And then the big part, almost 80% of the people are the people that can do with dispassionate facts, with information, because we are living in an era of infodemics, my dear sister.
What is the role of business in ensuring that the recovery from COVID-19, which has impacted on our economy, which was already suffering and trailing at like around 1% economic growth, limping along? What's the role of business in assisting that recovery? And when can we say we can look and we have recovered from COVID-19 and we have recovered from the economic challenges that South Africa is facing?
So unfortunately, we have been pummeled on all sides by a number of things, some of them outside of our control. I mean the truckers' protest in Canada, the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which is unjustified and therefore indefensible, but also the issues of climate change. So as business, we've been very explicit that we are standing ready to work with this government, and we are absolutely committed to working with government to drive economic growth. Because if the economy is not growing, very soon we'll be talking about the redistribution of poverty, not the redistribution of wealth. To that effect, 28th of January, 9 times before the State of the Nation address by the President, we forwarded to the Presidency 6 immediate priorities to deliver on through public-private partnerships. Number 1, we said we needed to invest for growth. Number 2, we said we needed to focus on infrastructure. Thirdly, we said let's focus on the network industries, including our ports, digital migration, and the 5G. The spectrum auction has been an unmitigated success. We've always known that if we were to have done this 15 years ago, we'd be in a much better space. We also said we needed to invest as business on this notion called a capable state, because we have realized that it's much easier to deal with a capable state than the one that is not. The penultimate one, we said, the President is sitting with 3 reports, the finalization of the appointment of the Chief Justice, which was done, the eminent persons report on the 2 weeks in July of rampant looting, but also the Zondo Commission report number 1, report number 2, report number 3, each probably coming with an average of about 3 volumes. We support all the recommendations, and we said all the 1,438 named individuals and companies must be charged, must be convicted, must be sentenced and serve time. Lastly, we said we need to focus on law and order, on crime and security, because without law and order, who are we and what are we? Back to you, Khaiteri.
Thanks so much, Professor Bonang Mohale, for your insight there and reaction to the President's speech last night. So let's stay with COVID-19 news. The National Institute for Communicable Diseases says the coronavirus